Welcome to Douglas County. My name is Kelly Robinson. I'm Vice Chairman of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners and Commissioner of District 2. Welcome to District Dialogue. This year's September 2022 edition is somewhat special. Last month I had my 6th Annual HOA Bootcamp, and this is going to be the highlight of that. It won't be the complete show, but there's some important parts I want you to remember. One, we live in interesting times with a lot of inflation regarding home appraisals and assessments, as well as what goes on in our daily lives in interacting with our citizens. So we've got a very special show that we've designed. It's over 4 hours, but this show here is only going to be 1 hour. We believe that it's going to be very entertaining and educational at the same time. So stay tuned for District Dialogue.
Thank you, Ivy, and thank you, Commissioner Robinson. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to share this information with you. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists and thank everybody who is here with us today in person, and also like to thank our citizens who are here online. I'm going to take a moment today and share some information with you about our comprehensive plan update. We are just kicking that comprehensive plan update off, and so I want to start there and talk about how through that process we're going to have the opportunity to take a deep dive into learning a little bit more about our housing characteristics that we have here in Douglas County. So I hope this lays a good foundation for the conversation that we plan to have together today. So do I have a presentation? Great, thank you. All right. So I've been starting with this slide when I talk about our comprehensive plan update. And you may say, why is she showing us a map from 1975? But the map that you see from 1975 is one of the oldest maps that I've been able to find for a comprehensive planning process that substantially looks like the way we do planning today. And the other map is our current future land use map that we're operating off of today. And I think that this is an important point to pause here and to just share for the greater good of the community this idea that through this plan update that we're working on now, we will cross that 50-year threshold of doing long-range planning in Douglas County. And I think that's a really important milestone, and I think it's a great opportunity to kind of look at where we've been as we think about where we're going moving forward. So the plan update that we're embarking on now is going to kind of cross into that 2025 time frame, and so it'll give us a good opportunity to look back at this 1975 map and just see how far we've come. Oops, too fast. Okay, so what I'm sharing with you now is our current future land use map. We talk a lot about character areas when we do future land use map planning. And anytime we look at how we're going to be doing land use changes, we want to make sure that we're voting with our future land use map. So this map is something that characterizes all of our land use in the county based on different categories, whether we want residential, commercial, industrial development in the county. So as part of our comprehensive plan update, this is a great opportunity for citizens to get involved and tell us what you would like to see in your community. Particularly as it relates to housing, it's going to be a great opportunity for folks to get involved, to say this is where we need to see some higher density housing, this is where we want to preserve our stable single family neighborhoods, and to really help us understand what the needs are for the community. Now, in addition to the future land use, to that parcel by parcel classification of whether something should be residential, commercial, or industrial, we've also heard your feedback that we need to be doing a better job of planning for the context in which that development is happening. So what I'm showing you here behind me is a draft of the character areas that we hope to develop as a part of this comprehensive plan update. We sort of have an idea, big picture, that like if you're in Lithia Springs, right, we know that that's one of the oldest developed parts of Douglas County. So we know that your housing stock is going to have very specific characteristics based on the time frame in which it was developed. We know that if you're kind of out in the western part of Douglas County, your housing stock is going to look very different because you fall under those protections of the Dog River watershed, and that demands that housing is a little bit larger and more spread out. right? And so we've heard you say that you need to do a better job, planning for the context and the character of where different development types are. So I share this with you to say I think this is one of the most exciting pieces for me that's going to be coming out of our comprehensive plan update, but it's really critical that we get the feedback from the community as we refine these boundaries, to make sure that we're looking appropriately at the different characteristics. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So I'm showing you here an example of some of the preliminary work that we've been doing, and this is from around the Lithia Springs area. We worked with a steering committee, between our last comprehensive plan update and the one that we're just starting on now, to say, tell us a little bit more detail about what's going on in your community, right? So we're still going to have those basic future land use categories. We're still going to look parcel by parcel at what we want to see going on the ground, but we're also going to make sure that we're planning for sort of the bigger community cohesion, right, for how all of those specific uses, work together.
Thank you. So, yes, I am Amy McCoy, and as most know me around Douglas County, the Amy McCoy, and now there's a .com, so check it out. All right. So, yes, I am the broker of my hometown realty group, and I have been serving, when I got my real estate license, I started in Douglas County. I really wanted to start in a community that I knew nothing about, which forced me to learn everything I could about it. So I've seen the highs, I've seen the lows. I have been right here with you as a resident, but not only as a resident, as a business owner. As Ivy said, I just celebrated my 9th year as the owner of my hometown realty group, and I selected Lithia Springs because I felt it gave the most homiest hometown feel in being right inside of a community, and a community that then wind up having the opportunity zone brought to it. Right now, my office is literally right across the street from it. However, I looked at that as an opportunity to bring type of investors in to help try to clean up an area that I had felt at one point had been forgotten. And other community stakeholders were feeling the same way. And so one of the beautiful things about Douglas County and our leaders, as well as our city leaders, is that they were willing to listen. Once we had a change of administration, you saw that they were willing to hear you out and say, hey, I think we can come to a meeting of the minds so that we can bring residents back into home ownership, which is what I really want to talk to you about. As you heard the commissioner say, between renters versus homeowners, home ownership is really the true key for community stakeholdership. Okay, we all want to know where our tax dollars are going, and you don't see as much people invested in that per se when you are just in a rental mentality. Now, as an investor myself, I have tenants. As an owner of a property management company, I deal with tenants. So it is truly a life cycle in that you hope that that person that is having to rent will eventually become a homeowner. And just to give you an idea, and I'm sorry I don't have all the pretty slides that my beautiful panelists had, but the average net worth of a renter versus a homeowner is staggering. Okay, how many believe that for the average net worth for a renter is really around $5,000? Can y'all believe that? Yeah, and for an average homeowner, before this skyrocket of prices, the average net worth of a homeowner was over $200,000. So when we talk about true generational wealth, we're really talking about the way to achieve that, the fastest and most easy, you would think, is going to be through home ownership. Okay? So the importance of home ownership is also how we fund. In America, how we fund our schools is through our tax dollars. So we need that home ownership in order to be able to help cover some of those expenses. And again, that's where you get your accountability on how the performance are, because you as an active stakeholder is going to be there and involved, correct? We can't just show up only when a child is not doing great, right? We want to know where those dollars are going. Okay, I think I'm hearing amens under the head shakes. Okay, all right. But what I want to do is I want to talk to you about a couple of the numbers. Okay, Allison did a great job on showing you between the difference of square footage, but what I want to do is I want to take you through a quick journey of what we have done on a local level, but also I want you to consider it from a state level. And because, you know, I've been blessed to work on a national level, you have to see how a snowball can come downhill and can go splat, okay? If anyone had lived in Douglas County through the financial crisis, then you'll understand why it's important to really have true community stakeholdership, just to make sure that our administration understands that they have teamwork happening in our community, okay? Because they can't do it by themselves. They need community stakeholders to be a part of the process, okay? So just as a starter, I'm gonna go ahead and hit from a national level, and then I'll take you to the local level, and so that way you'll have a greater understanding. And I'll even take you through the economic impact necessarily of having home ownership and why it's important to be a part of that.
Executive Officer of the Westside Home Builders Association, which is actually a 5-county association. We cover Douglas, Carroll, Haralson, Paulding, and Polk counties. And so my view is a bigger, broader view than just Douglas County, although I live in Douglas County and have for, gosh, over 25 years. So I'm very familiar with the Douglas County market. My background, just very quickly, I'm an attorney by education, but I've been in the real estate industry since a year after law school, from a broker to a developer to a builder, back to basically a developer. Here in Douglas County, some of you are familiar with Holly Springs, the 3 subdivisions within the community of Holly Springs. That was my development. And then I've been in South Fulton and other areas, Savannah, Florida, et cetera, as far as development. So I've got a pretty broad background in the real estate industry. So basically what I wanted to do today was just simply give you some quick information relative to the marketplace, and especially what's going on with new homes. Relative to the marketplace in general, and I'm talking about not just our 5 counties, but really the entire South. What has occurred is there's been an enormous influx, and it continues, from the West Coast, the East Coast, and the upper Midwest. For example, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. Enormous movement out of California for a variety of reasons into, some of it is close, states close to, such as Arizona, but an awful lot of it is coming to the South. The same, in just as an example, there have been 84 companies in a 6-month period of time that have left California, 84 major corporations that have left California and moving east, a lot of it in the South. They're bringing enormous numbers of residents with them, the people who are executives, et cetera, who work for those companies. You see, that's just 84 companies in a 6-month period, not counting small businesses, just major corporations. So what we're seeing is an enormous influx from the West Coast. We're seeing there were 3.5 million people who left New York City from the 1st of 2020 until now. 3.5 million have left New York City, moving a lot of them south. If you look at Florida, for example, and I'm very familiar with that marketplace, I've developed down there, and you'll see where prices have actually doubled since around 2000, well, about 3 years ago. Prices have basically doubled in a lot of areas of Florida simply because there's an enormous influx of people into Florida with money in their pockets. Why? They're selling houses for twice, oftentimes, and let's bring it down to a local level. They're oftentimes selling a house in, let's say, Connecticut or New York, the area, that general vicinity, or on the West Coast, they're selling a house for twice what they can pay here. So they're coming in with money in their pocket, and that's why the realtor mentioned to you that there are so many people bidding on houses. There's an enormous influx of people into the South. The biggest influx has been in Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. And it'll continue for quite some time. Why so much? It's a combination of taxes, it's a combination of regulation in these other areas of the country, and it's crime. Those are the factors. So the
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad to be here with you. I thank Commissioner Robinson for his invitation and Ivy on getting me here on time and knowing what I'm supposed to do. So I appreciate that very much. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to talk on, and some of the things I brought to talk about have been covered. So I'm going to offer a few insights that I have as a 30-plus year banker. My world is the commercial lending world. So I don't do the residential piece other than I work with builders when they seek to build houses. I work with other types of commercial loans as well, but I do work with a good many builders in the metro Atlanta area. I'll speak on quickly as the board chair for the Douglas County Development Authority. Our goal and our ambition is to bring community companies to our community that bring good paying jobs. One of the things we focus on is what's the average wage per hour? What's the average salary per employee? When these companies come to our community, we track that. We ask them to provide that data so we know that we're bringing the best quality jobs that we can have to our community. I've been here since 97, living here since 2000. We used to hear no more warehouse jobs. And now it's like, okay, now we've got a great supply of data center jobs. Our community is changing a great deal. Its complexion as far as the employment base, and our goal as the Development Authority is to keep track of that and to keep moving us forward so that we have the best paying jobs possible. That moves our housing stock forward too. Those people that come here want different housing. One of the things that I'll start with is the ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission, predicts our population will reach 192,000 by the year 2050. And that would mean we have a 46,000 person increase in our community. That is 1,484 new residents per year. So that's going to keep my friend Chandran, Greg, myself, Allison, and Amy very busy working toward quality housing and managing those houses and working with those builders to get housing and working with zoning to be sure that we do the proper things for our community. So I think it's a very exciting time to be in our business. We all have a lot of expertise, and it's an exciting time to be here with you. I'm going to give you some just anecdotal information I have being in the commercial finance industry that I see as trends happening. A lot of our builders are looking toward multifamily housing. Now, in the exurbs here and from here west, single family is probably more prevalent, but if you look at going anywhere from here toward Atlanta, and I've had the good fortune of making loans on housing as far as Dawsonville, Georgia, South Carolina, and as far west as we go toward Alabama. So we see a lot of the builders, especially the regional and national builders, looking at multifamily as their trend. And people say, why is that? A lot of things we see is just the cost of land has increased dramatically. So when you used to be able to buy a lot and develop it for maybe 20 to 30,000, that cost per lot now is more like 40 to 50,000 as developed. And that's your site clearing, your infrastructure, your sewer, your water, anything like that. So we see builders say it's more economically feasible for me to build multifamily versus single family in certain markets. Not always the case, but it is a trend we see. A lot of what we've seen recently, and recently is probably since the pandemic, is the build for rent market. We've seen a lot of developers come along who have money coming out of hedge funds, out of much larger cities, that say we see a value in building a whole community for rent. And there are pros and cons to that. People have different opinions about that. But I've looked at deals where we put 150 townhomes in Paulding County. And you would not think Paulding County would have a strong rental market, but those things rented quickly. And they rented for market rate. So they were probably $1,400 per month up. So you see those trends, and people say, well, why are you seeing investors come in? And Amy touched on the investors coming and buying residential stock. Return on investment is one of the biggest things we've got. Their ability to predict a return on their investment versus going into the stock market with their money is pretty dramatic. You can see and here lately it's been a 13 to 18% increase per year in your value, but safely 5 to 8% in a normal course of the year, your investment growth.
In 2014, we started the HOA Bootcamp in South Fulton, which was really, at that time, I guess it was unincorporated Fulton County. It is now the city of South Fulton. We had over 300 people come out because they were excited about their HOA. They either love what we found is people either love their HOA or they hate it. And so we were having problems in our HOA, and we were looking for answers. We found those answers on a website or app called Nextdoor. But the answers were really in the subdivision next door. The answers were really with the homeowners in the subdivision down the street. And what we found out was that the builders and the developers and the counties and the cities were all talking across subdivision lines. But we as homeowners were not talking across those same subdivision lines. Let me see the hands for people that are on their board. If you're on the board of your HOA, let me see your hand. All right, congratulations and condolences. You have signed on for the rest of your life. Because no one can ever get a quorum. You will be in that position until you die. All right? But seriously, I think we do have a presentation on short-term rentals, a slideshow, a slide deck, if we can pull that up, please. Most HOAs, and HOA is a type of community association. It could be a condo association, right? It could be a mobile home association. It could be a property owners association. The new act that the state has passed is called the POA. So there are different types of community associations, whether that is a HOA or COA or POA or MOA, but typically they work the same. Most of them are first and foremost nonprofit, Georgia nonprofit corporations, okay? And then those Georgia nonprofit corporations typically have what they call mandatory membership. You are a member as soon as you sign the line, right? And you must pay your dues, right? And so one of the things that we tried to do, and certainly thanks to Commissioner Robinson and State Representative William Bodie and State Senator Donzella James, we introduced an act at the state level called the Community Association Protection Act. And so we're going to need you to reach out to your state legislators because we need rules that will help us govern these 10,000 different communities. So in the state of Georgia, there are over 2 million Georgians that live in a community association. And there are over 10,000 community associations. How many different sets of rules do you think there are? I couldn't hear you. 10,000 different sets of rules. One for each community association. No wonder there's so much confusion. Nobody knows what the rules are, right? And if you move from one place to the next, there's a whole different set of rules. And in fact, when the board transitions from one board to the next board, the next board might interpret those rules differently and implement and execute those rules differently. So we talked about mandatory membership. There are two things with your HOA. Number one is the Georgia Nonprofit Corporation, right? Number two is the Declaration of Protective Covenants. Now, some people just call it the Declaration, some people call it the Covenants. The long formal title is Declaration of Protective Covenants. That is a contract between you as a homeowner and the association. And you and the association are both bound by the terms of that contract. You hear people talk about the articles of association. If you have any corporation, you have bylaws and articles of incorporation. So what those do, what the bylaws do, the bylaws govern how the company will operate. How do you elect officers? When do elections occur? What are the terms for those officers, okay? The Declaration of Protective Covenants governs the land. It governs the use and land restrictions imposed on the land. So let's assume that this is a 50-acre room, and I am the declarant. I went out and bought this 50-acre lot, and I am imposing declarations. I say no one can eat Chick-fil-A in this room. Right? That's one of the restrictions. I declare no one can eat Chick-fil-A in this room. It's a use restriction. So if you come into this room, right, and the example with your home could be no basketball goals, right? Or the basketball goal must be 90 degrees perpendicular to the street, right? And I don't know, it gets confusing sometimes, but those type of rules are put in place by the declarant through the Declaration of Protective Covenants. And so it governs all the rules and restrictions for the land included in that subdivision. And so, again, nonprofit corporation and Declaration of Protective Covenants runs with the land. So those are kind of the background things. Again, most of these HOAs, community associations, are have mandatory membership. All right, and so there are, how many people, we have anyone that lives in condominium? So condos are governed, we got one over there. Condos are governed by, in the state of Georgia, they are governed by the Condominium Act, okay? The Condominium Act. Most HOAs, there is no HOA Act. There is no HOA Act in the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, HOAs are governed, one, by the Nonprofit Corporation Code, and then two, they are also governed by the Real Estate Code. And so if you are a board member on an HOA in the state of Georgia, you are charged with the task of interpreting, number one, the Nonprofit Corporation Code, number two, the Real Estate Code. And you have to read those two codes together in order to apply them to your HOA and how it should be governed.
Good morning, or we in the afternoon already. It's a pleasure to be here again. Chandra Forte, Commissioner Robinson, thank you. Attorney Arrington, thank you for all the work that you do. Please keep me on task, because I promise you I eat, sleep, and breathe this thing, so I can probably talk all day, all right? To some of the points, and I'll kind of go back from our earlier portion of our platform, you heard from, I think it was Greg with the Homework Builders Association, and even with Amy in speaking. One thing that was glaring was that a solvent association, a solvent, healthy, productive association is going to be the catalyst for stabilizing, our neighborhoods, our communities, here in Douglas County, all right? Having done this for, 18 years, we've seen quite things change. We are definitely in the midst of a peculiar time and market perspective. Board members, for those of you that raise their hand, and even from just a localized, just day-to-day perspective, just coming off of COVID, HOA and condo living in space was already one that was frowned upon. You said you love it or you hate it. Well, that's amplified times 10 now coming off of COVID. It seems that everyone is either raging, from having just been sitting at home, looking out, raging about their communities, to board members being frustrated, limited funds coming in, inabilities to be able to do certain things, and quite frankly, in some situations where you have an abundance of just negligence that is occurring. How do we kind of navigate through and all of that, all right? So financial solvency, let me kind of start there, and I'm gonna work with, please indulge me for a moment. A few years ago, probably about a year or so ago, you guys may have heard about the tragedy down in Florida, Surfside condos, those condos that fell and so many different lives were lost. That is impacting us as an association, from an industry perspective, significantly, all right? As related to our financials and what we do and how we do in deed restricted communities, how we budget, are we planning, are we taking 10% of those dues that are collected annually, are we putting them into a reserve account, how we're funding for those contingencies, extremely important. all the way to the tune at this point where you're seeing the information is circulating at state level. You know what, before Amy shared about state bodies, because I, again, as a broker, commission real estate, those FHA loans and AVA, trying to purchase in the communities. The association financial disposition and that disclosure is one of the things that we have to provide as managing agents on behalf of that association to help that closing move along. Here of recent, if those budgets are not showing clear indicators where that association is funding from a reserve perspective and saving, they're denying those loans. If they're showing where, hey, if we don't have X amount of maintenance that's been budgeted for and moving along and we've got money sitting over here, they are denying those loans. What does that say to us, all right? In addition to that, they're looking for reserve studies. And this was particularly, you would see these in condominiums all of the time. Well, now you've got this happening on our standard HOA, our homeowner associations. As Mr. Arrington was, Attorney Arrington was sharing, before here, talking about the POA and the difference between the Condominium Act versus if you're just a HOA here, in the state of Georgia and how it's governed. The Condominium Act and condos, they tend to have a whole nother tougher level of just restrictions because they have so much more in many instances to maintain, from your roofs to your sidings to not just pretty much everything on the exterior that you see as related to a condominium. The likelihood is that the association is going to be responsible for that, as opposed to an HOA where you're just talking about just the common assets, maybe your pool clubs houses, your front entrance and signs and to that extent. But it's changing. We were talking about lives lost and how a board of directors is moving it along to collect, to make sure that the monies are coming in. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this is all about the money. So I'm trying to hopefully kind of move us along the thought process in terms of how one thing is connected to the next and the next, all right? So if we're looking at this from the perspective of, we're coming and we don't have the money to do. We've got an issue. In that instance in Florida, they were preparing. They knew they had this issue and they were saving and had been going through the process of special assessing and going along that way. But it wasn't enough soon enough and didn't happen quick enough. And as a result, lives were lost. That D&O insurance that was referenced there earlier is so very important. You've got your liabilities, your property, your D&O. You equally now, I would recommend from a crime perspective, cyber, because we've got so much happening right now on social media. I'm bringing us to our rogue kind of board members here, but equally, if they're out there and putting out bad information, things get out, that's cyber security and coverage there that helps you in that aspect. So that is a very important thing to have. But equally, for some of our smaller communities that may be 50 and under, and you're not so heavily from a financial disposition, and you have to do things voluntarily, or you want to, hey, put this committee together to go kind of do these things, you can get a level of a workers' comp policy as well. And that's very nominal, about $500 a year, just to kind of help cover in that aspect if you're doing something and you got somebody on the front entrance, they mess up, step in a pothole or something to that extent. So they're very, those coverages, insurance is very, very, very important. As a spinoff of, this Surfside condo issue, the insurance market, now we're seeing our policies about 32% higher. And that's period, point blank, 32% higher. And that the reason is again, because of the level of liability that comes along with it, all right? So as board members and just in service, it is extremely important that you're covered. If you are in fact making those decisions and you're executing in good faith and within the scope of what your documents allow and afford you to do, that defense coverage will in fact pick up to protect you in that aspect. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson, for having us so that we can shed some light on this, on the crime in the county. So I've been here for 19 years and I've seen this thing change, this county grow. And the things that I have seen, especially in the sheriff's office, is that this was a profession at one time that people wanted to be in, to be able to serve and to protect their communities. With some of the recent things that happened over the years, this is not such a popular profession anymore. So we have staff shortages. We are short. We were 68 positions short, now we 50 positions short. And I'm saying all that to say this: in order to serve and protect the people, we gotta have people to do that. And right now, we just don't have as many people as we would love to have, or nor do we have the amount of people that we would have all over the county at one time. So we do provide services. We are a full-service sheriff's office. And just to give you a little bit of education on that, sheriff is responsible for the jail, the courts, and serving civil papers. So if we're short in those areas, then we got to pull more people off the streets to cover those areas. So there, again, opens up opportunities for crime to occur on your properties, on your person. You know, so we do have to keep in mind when we are building all these things that we invite people in. We want the revenue. We want the people to come to this community. But as the population grows, the crime rate will go up. It's just how it is. There's no rhyme, no reason for that, but that's just how it is. That's the trend that we've been seeing, you know. But as it relates to the HOA, we do not enforce the rules for the HOA. That is something that the HOA and code enforcement have to work on together. However, if there is a crime committed in that particular subdivision or apartment complex or whatever it may be, we will respond to those. We do try to provide services such as jumping off cars, domestic escorts, and that's 24 hours a day, you know, 7 days a week. We are unlocking cars, you know, but again, with the shortage of people, sometimes we may not be able to do all of these things, you know. One thing I will bring to light, if you don't have it in your subdivision, is, and it's helped us a great deal with what we do, is called a flock camera, F-L-O-C-K, flock camera. Now, some businesses and subdivisions already have these in place. And what this is a tag reader. So in most places, they got one coming in and one going out. Well, how that works, it reads that tag. So if that car was in a crime, if that car was in the commission of a crime, it reads that tag. That tag is stolen. If that car is stolen, it reads that tag and it reports it to us so that we can get on top of it right away. Flock has helped us out a great deal, and we recently put some more around the county, and we're looking to put more in other places. But one thing that it really has helped us with is, again, identifying people so that we can, and Flock is all over. It's not just here local, it goes all over, you know, so we can find some. We found people in Mobile, Alabama one time, you know, that committed a crime and fled, you know, and through that Flock camera, we were able to trace him and track him and get him back and bring him to justice. The flock cameras in your neighborhoods are vital to protecting your properties. Now, one other thing I will say is we have a lot of entering autos, and that has been a big problem, and we've had that, and it's continued to trend in the northern, is continuing to trend so that we can go, excuse me, it's continuing to trend upwards. In other words, there's more and more of them occurring. So one thing I will tell you is just to lock your doors. Tell your people, put out some stuff on your bulletin boards, in your newsletters, whatever it is that you have. Lock your doors. Take your valuables out, because there are so many things that are coming out, and you will be surprised. They leave guns, they leave wallets, purse, credit cards. And these people don't care. If it looks like they can make some money off of it, they're going in there and get it if it's available. It's different today. People just don't care about anyone. They don't respect anyone else's property.
Now let's go ahead and get started. I'm here. Make sure that's the right one. There should have been another. That was the slide that I actually sent you guys. Okay, but we'll go from this one. So this is on becoming a DBE. So I want to first give you guys some information about that one. First of all, becoming a DBE is very important when it comes to Douglas County. It's very important when it comes to your SPLOST dollars, because what happens is that you want to have vendors type people in your community. So as you end up doing that, you're building upon your business, you're building upon becoming a vendor in Douglas County. You guys are given a card that says purchasing. Make sure that you go to the purchasing website and actually learn how to become a vendor in Douglas County. Becoming a vendor in Douglas County is totally separate from becoming a vendor in the city of Douglasville. You have to go to both government agencies to do that. Same thing with WSA. The good thing now is that because during this SPLOST period of time, we started focusing and seeing what we can do when it came to having minority and DBE businesses coming in. You also can end up going to CEI's website and actually checking in and finding out what qualifies as being a DBE. You could be a large firm that's minority, but because of your own wealth or because your business's wealth, you end up going, you no longer be a DBE, but you could be a minority business. Next, going into, this is going to finish out my part of the slide presentation, but what I want to show you guys is that you are given one of these cards that talks about your strategic priorities. When it comes to SPLOST, we actually had first up was public safety. Right now that's 32%, and the current SPLOST, which is called the 2016 SPLOST, is going to end come April of 2023. So right now, public safety portion only is funding fire, EMS, and a digital radio system. So how is that? Why is SPLOST important to HOAs? Well, one part of it is that if you live in a community and you're close to a fire station, meaning if you're over here on Riverside, you're not only close to fire station number 6, but there's a brand new fire station being built for Bay that's going to be out on Douglas Boulevard and SR 6. So that's important to your property value. That's important to your life, because police and fire come out there to first take care of your life. Second is to take care of your property. And then, so if you're in that area, your property value goes up, especially having 2 fire stations near you. The second priority was basically infrastructure, and the third was economic development. Put those two together, what's that make? Transportation. So if you remember the flood back in 2009, the Whitestone Culvert was wiped out over there in District 4. Your SPLOST dollars helped to build a new culvert. In this area, you go up and down Riverside, a young lady was actually killed, coming from work, real early in the morning, killed by 18-wheeler. Therefore, we started going up and making sure we had street lights. When it comes to a third part, which is the Parks and Rec, 17%, it was at a HOA that you guys said, hey, we need a senior center. It was at HOA that you guys came out and said, we need a multi-purpose center, someplace for our seniors to go, someplace for our young people to go. And you want to make sure you live in a live, work, play area. So therefore, your HOA dues, you come in and say, well, what are the amenities around here? Well, you can always invite a commissioner to your HOA. Did you guys know that there are more than 900 neighborhoods in Douglas County? That means that there's 900 areas that you guys actually can impact just with your voice. There are roads all throughout the county. They need to be resurfaced. This current SPLOST did $3 million per year for resurfacing. This last year, I believe it's $9.8 million is being put towards resurfacing. Over Commissioner Robinson wanted to make sure there was a certain amount that went to subdivisions. Usually subdivisions aren't covered by thoroughfare type of resurfacing. They're usually covered by your internal, meaning that our DCDOT would take care of the internal, the thoroughfare for the SPLOST would take care of those longer roads. But now we're into a point of saying, you say, hey, it's important for our roads to be taken care of. So we're making sure that we put a vast amount of money into that. You guys said that it's important for our police and our fire to be able to talk to each other. If there's a fire on I-20 or there's something that's going on that's close to the county line where multiple jurisdictions are called in, they have to be able to talk to each other. We spent over $15.3 million on a digital radio system just to make sure, because it's got to be a headache that Lieutenant Colonel Pounds is over here trying to talk to someone out there in Cobb County because there's a fire near there and they have to get things set up. If they can't talk to you, he got to switch a different frequency just to talk to them. That takes time. Lives can be lost.
So my name is Dory Henry. I'm the Chief of Staff of State Senator Donzella James. She represents Douglas County and Fulton County in District 35. She could not be here with us today. She has bronchitis and can't talk. And any of you all who know Senator James, you know she likes to talk. So she sent me instead. Thank you, Commissioner Robinson, for holding this event. I know you have it several times during the year. And thank you, Commissioner Arrington, for your insight and all of your information. Knowing that HOAs are supposed to be a benefit for the homeowners, that's the pro side of it. In the Senate office, we hear the con side, you know, there's pros and cons of everything. We get all of the complaints from the homeowners on what the HOA is not doing. Because of COVID-19, knowing that people lost their jobs, they didn't have any, you know, the funding was scarce, and even though they were still making their mortgage payments, a lot of us, some people did not pay their HOA fee. So that causes a problem for those associations. And sometimes we know HOAs don't always do what they're supposed to do. You know, they promise us pools, they promise us clubhouses, they promise us tennis courts, and those things never come to fruition, and there's really not anything that the homeowner can do about the HOA not providing the services that we sign on to when we sign our closing documents when we purchase those homes. But if we don't pay our homeowners association fees, they're filing suits and lawsuits against us. They want to foreclose on your home. If they foreclose on your home, then your home is getting sold up underneath you, and sometimes we don't even know that your home has been foreclosed on. So having said that, Senator James, this past legislative session, passed a piece of legislation in the form of a resolution. It's Senate Resolution 615, and that created a property owners association, homeowners association, and condominium association study. What the study committee is designed to do is for homeowners, like all of you in the room, and even the homeowners associations, to come to the table and let's talk about those issues that we have in our communities, and hopefully pass a piece of legislation that's going to protect the homeowner. How the study committees works is the lieutenant governor assigns specific state senate, because it's a senate study committee, specific senators to each study committee, and there's about 5 of them, 5 or 6. Well, the lieutenant governor hasn't made those appointments yet to our study committee. So I'm here to ask you all, if you're interested, and we want you to be a part of that group, to reach out to the lieutenant governor's office. Let me give you his phone number. That's Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, and his name is spelled with a G, G-E-O-F-F as in Frank. Duncan. The phone number is 404-656-5030, and his email address is Jeff, G-E-O-F-F .Duncan at LTGOV, like Lieutenant Governor, .ga.gov. We're asking you all to call his office, send emails to his office, encouraging him, urging him to make appointments to that study committee as soon as possible so we can move forward and help you all resolve your issues. We have one of our constituents who's been having an issue with his homeowners association for over 3 years. They owed him some specific repairs and they have not done that. And so they were trying to put him out of his house for him not paying his homeowners association dues. So we're just trying to get some parity and making sure that even though we sign a contract when we buy our homes, it offers them certain rights and it offers us certain rights. And we want to make sure that our rights don't get taken advantage of. Email address again for the Lieutenant Governor is G-E-O-F-F, G as in George, E as in Edward, O as in Oscar, F-F as in Frank 2 times, .Duncan, D as in David, U-N as in Nancy, C-A-N as in Nancy, at L-T, L as in Larry, T as in Tom, gov.ga.gov. If you need to get in touch with us, our office number is 404-463-1379. If you need to get a hold of Senator James directly, you can call me. My number is 470-418-2036. Again, my name is Dory Henry, D-O-R-E-E-H-E-N-R-Y. And my email address is doryhenry, that's my name, @gmail.com. I'm the Chief of Staff for State Senator Donzella James, District 35. Thank you for having me. If you have any questions, I'm willing to take them. Yes, sir.
This is a very important event that we had. Again, a lot of good topics to my panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Again, we're going to have the 7th annual next time. Again, in August, we're going to continue this conversation, and we're making progress. Again, we showed you that we enacted, based on last year, we changed our code, requiring requirements, requiring financials to be disclosed, elections being disclosed, dealing with the Airbnb. So we do hear you, and we do take action. It's one thing to talk. It's one thing I've learned in 14 years. Like, I don't like to talk. I just get stuff done. Right? And to your point, you got to build relationships. You got to get to a majority, get to 3, quit talking, quit studying, get something done. Show the citizens that you've got some action taken. They can hear you. They can see that fruit. They can see it. So that's how you judge real elected officials. It's about the fruit. So I thank you guys for coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm signing off. Kelly Robinson, District 2 Vice Chair of Board of Commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for the shout out late. And all my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Mitchell and Ann Jones-Dyer. Thank you. Good day. Welcome back, Douglas County. Wow, what a show. These panelists were just something else. I want to thank, again, my panelist, Allison Duncan, manager of, obviously, our planning and zoning. I want to thank Leslie Chu, though he couldn't be there. I thank him for introducing us to Greg Wallace, who is the president of West Georgia Builders Association. I want to thank Amy McCoy for her contribution to what we're doing, and Mike Stevens, of course, from First Service Pro for their contribution as a banker. That's on the housing side, and hopefully you got a lot of information about, the general market. Right, we live in interesting times. Things are evolving. But again, one more time, it's all about education. The second part, I also want to thank my colleagues, Marvin Arrington Jr. from Fulton County Commission for always bringing forth that thought leadership regarding the HOA Bootcamp. Senator Donzella James, though you couldn't be there with us, I hope you're getting well. Thank you for your presence. Also, Sean John Forte, brand new. Congratulations on your marriage, but also for being there to help and contributing. And of course, Lieutenant Colonel Pounds for your contribution on crime, and David Good. I want to thank you guys all who made this a very magical and very special edition of District 2's Dialogue. Thank you, Douglas County. I look forward to next time. See you soon.